How you doing out there? Enzo DiCostanzo podcast, and today's our third uh, video or discussion for monetary policy and fiscal policy. Okay, so we have a couple questions here from the fourth assignment. You see numbers 3 and 4, the pros and cons of monetary policy, the pros and cons of fiscal policy. So let's address those. With just a discussion. We're not going to have, there's no Excel in what we're talking about today. So we're looking for macroeconomic outcomes. Governments have two courses of actions: monetary policy or fiscal policy. So in other words, they can, and actually what we should have done here was taken the, I should have taken, this one. So we can make the changes as anytime I go through these, I always find something else that I want to do with it. So here we go. And actually, I probably should have used this one. So, and let's again, even though we've discussed this in previous lectures, let's take a look at the definitions of this stuff. And what monetary policy is: it's managing the money supply and interest rates by central banks to stimulate a faltering economy. It says the central bank will cut interest rates, making it less expensive to borrow, while increasing the money supply. If the economy is growing too rapidly, the central bank can implement a tighter monetary supply by raising interest rates and moving money from circulation. Okay, so we're stimulating the economy. We're doing that one, making it less expensive. Okay, it says if the economy is growing too rapidly, the central bank can implement a tighter monetary policy by raising and removing money from circulation. Okay, so yeah, so here you have the two sort of versions of what's going on with these economies. Right, you have the faltering one, or an economy that's growing too rapidly. Those are the two pieces of this. Okay. Yeah, those are the two pieces of this. Okay, in terms of monetary policy. So, and what we saw, and I've said this in class, and what we saw since 08, 09 was obviously wanted to stimulate the economy as much as possible, more money supply, less expensive to borrow, lower interest rates, and low interest rates for quite a while. And then the economy is growing too rapidly. The central bank, that's sort of where we are now. Supposed to be tighter monetary policy, raising interest rates. But what I have not chased the interest rates, we know interest rates are increasing, but I didn't check the removing money from circulation. But I know the Federal Reserve is buying back those instruments, and again having less capital in the commercial banks for them to lend. That's definitely happening. So, but I need to chase it down a little more quantitatively. Fiscal policy determines the way where the central government earns money through taxation and how it spends. Okay, so this is taxing and spending, which is there. And same thing. To stimulate the economy, the government cuts tax rates, increases its own spending, and again, breaking these into pieces here. Cooling over, and then cooling down, raise taxes and cut back on spending. Like that. Okay. So how the central government earns money through taxation. So yeah, that's fiscal policy. And again, you're trying to stimulate an economy, which is here. That's taxes, increases its own spending, and then you're trying to cool down an overheating, cool down, right? An overheating economy. Raise taxes and cuts back on spending. Okay, there's much debate as to whether the monetary policy or fiscal policy is a better economic tool. Each one has its good, the good and the bad of it. And so, okay, so there you go. And again, we've repeated these a couple times, but now we have a little more detail in terms of the advantages and disadvantages of each. So just sort of repeating some of the basics here, what central banks do and things of this nature. Central banks use monetary policy to keep economic growth in check, stimulate economies out of periods of recession. Central banks can be effective. There could be negative long-term consequences that stem from short-term fixes. Yeah, again, being a short-term solution versus a long-term solution, those are tough. Those are tough objectives to balance sometimes. Fiscal policy refers to tools used by the government to change levels of taxation to influence the economy. And fiscal policy can be swayed by politics, placating voters, which can lead to poor decisions that are not informed by data or economic theory. And those are some of the big words. What we've learned from the past is as much theory as you can have in social science versus the data, which is certainly the most important piece of that. If monetary policy isn't coordinated with fiscal policy enacted by governments, it can undermine the efforts as well. So, in other words, if the governments lower interest rates and then spend less, you're sort of counteracting, one objective of monetary policy versus what you're doing with fiscal policy. And now we'll repeat these a bit. This says, which is here. Monetary policy refers to actions taken by a country's central bank to achieve its macroeconomic policy objectives. Some central banks are tasked with targeting a particular level of inflation. The U.S. central bank, which is we call the Federal Reserve, or short the Fed, you hear that a lot in the media. It's established with the mandate to achieve maximum employment and price stability. So this is what it's here for. This is what it's here for. Underlining that. We want stable prices, employment, and maximum, which is there. This is the dual mandate of the U.S. central bank. And most countries separate the monetary authority from any outside political influence. Well, Trump obviously wasn't a gigantic fan of Jay Powell. To sit there and say that that's really how it is just that's naive. To sit there and say, it has nothing to do with the political leadership. Wow, but also hopefully, and we like to use the courts as a sort of an example, but that's hard to do. What do you call it? That the legal system and the decisions that are made, there should be objective and should be sort of data based and theory based and reality based and effectiveness based with the central bank policy, that those things should be happening objectively, blindly, in a sense, in terms of the effect on the political party. But I think we all know. But certainly with the central bank, it's probably a little easier to do that in a sense. But still, I mean, those. I don't think we live in times where you could really separate those as much as maybe we'd ideally like to. So the country's economy is growing at a fast pace, such inflation increase to worrisome levels. The central bank will enact restrictive monetary policy to tighten money supply, reducing the amount of money in circulation, lowering the rate at which money enters the system. Raising the risk-free interest rate makes money more expensive and increases borrowing costs, reducing the demand for cash and loans. Okay, so this is when the economy grows at a fast pace, that kind of a thing. And the Fed also increases the level of reserves and commercial retail banks. Right, you want to restrict monetary policy here, reducing amount of money in circulation, raising worsen level, effectively reducing amount of money. Yeah, and also so right. Reducing money supply, and then the second part of that, and still with a fast-growing economy, you're raising the risk-free interest rate to make money more expensive, increase borrowing costs, reducing the demand for cash and loans is what you're trying to do here. Okay, all good stuff, all really good stuff. Though the more you sort of figure this stuff out. So also the Fed can increase the level of reserves on commercial banks, retail banks on hand, limiting the ability to generate new loans. Selling government bonds from its balance sheet to the public in the open market reduces money in circulation. Economists of the monetary school adhere to the virtues of monetary policy. Okay, so we have a little bit of a deeper version of what monetary policy can sort of do for us. And again, let's sort of go back to this other paragraph right here. It says, again, increasing the level of reserves in commercial and retail banks, that are the reserves that have to be kept on hand legally, or policy-wise, rather, might be the better word. Limiting limiting the commercial bank's ability to generate loans. Selling bonds from the balance sheet to the public, again, takes money out of circulation. We said it right there. And economists of the monetary school, people who think that the monetary policy is the best way to control the economy, think like this. Now this is the economy growing too fast. Now, when the economy slides into recession, right, we use all the same tools here, but in reverse. So that would be a looser monetary policy or expansionary monetary policy. Interest rates are lowered, reserve limits are loosened, bonds are purchased. So we're putting money back into circulation. And it says up here, sell it to the public in the open market. Well, I thought that you're selling this to the commercial banks, but okay. So I guess the commercial banks are considered the public. Bonds are purchased in exchange for newly created money, and if these traditional measures fall short, the central bank can undertake unconventional monetary policy, such as quantity. In other words, just printing a lot of money. So you sort of had two, again, a little more detail on the two sides of the coin with this. Now, in terms of the good and the bad of the whole monetary policy idea, small amount of inflation is healthy. Right? We always like 2%. Over time, we've sort of developed that that's a good number. It encourages investments in the future and allows workers to expect higher wages. Inflation occurs when the general price level of all goods and services in an economy increases. By raising the target interest rate, investment becomes more expensive and works to slow economic growth a bit. Okay, so it says interest rates target control and controls inflation. As we previously said, inflation is generally, you want to have a controllable inflation. Workers expect higher wages, and the price level increases reasonably. By raising the target interest rate, the investment becomes more expensive and works to slow the economic growth a bit. So, in other words, if we make the circulation of money more expensive, you're dampening the demand. Is really what's meant there. Monetary policy, it's a meeting at a bank. They have 8 of them a year, so they can act quickly to use monetary policy tools, just signaling their intentions to make the market can yield results. If monetary policy actions are unpopular, it can be undertaken before or during elections without that's fantasy right there, but okay. And then weakening the currency can boost exports. Again, increasing my supply or lowering interest rates tend to devalue the local currency. A weakened currency on world markets can boost exports, as these products are effectively less expensive for foreigners to purchase. The opposite effect would happen if companies are mainly importers, hurting their bottom line. Okay. So in other words, if we're buying from France or China or whatever, and our currency is weak, then it's going to take a lot of our dollars to buy, again, generally in someone else's currency. Okay, so that's certainly the some of the different. It says the pros, but certainly some of that you can put that under the sort of the unfavorable, the unfavorable sort of shocks here, or unfavorable effects. The negatives of monetary policy that they do have, in terms of, you can enact the policy, but in terms of the economic activity, everyone says, okay, well, the interest rates changed yesterday, so everybody, and the next day, everyone's going to just take out new loans or stop taking out loans or those kinds of things. It just doesn't, the impact of that, the policy you can make, but the effect on the economy can take some time for those effects, even years, for those effects to be felt and for the intended effect to materialize, if it's not counteracted with some other forces. The macro effects of monetary policy occur after some time has passed. There's a time lag, so the effects in the economy may take months or even years to materialize. Some economists believe money is merely a veil, and while serving to stimulate an economy in the short run, it has no long-term effect except for raising the general level of prices without boosting real economic output here. Interest rates can only be lowered nominally to 0%, which limits the bank's use of this policy tool when they're already low, which is pretty much where they were now, right? Keeping rates low for long periods of time can lead to liquidity trap, and this tends to make monetary policy tools more effective during an economic expansion than a recession. Okay, some European central banks have recently experimented with negative interest rate policy, but the results won't be known for some time. Yeah, this liquidity trap thing, I've heard that term a couple times, and maybe we can go quickly look it up somewhere. Uh, trap. Yeah, here's the short answer to this thing. We always like a nice graphic. When consumers and investors hoard cash and refuse to spend, rendering monetary policy ineffective. So yeah, I mean that's if you want some, and this is not a lecture on liquidity trap, but that's a way to sort of keep that definition in mind. This tends to make monetary policy tools more effective during expansions than recessions. And some European central banks have recently experimented with negative interest rate policies, but the results won't be known for some time to come. Monetary policy tools are general and affect an entire country. Uh, have economy-wide impact and do not account for the fact that some areas of the country might not need the stimulus, while states with high employment might need the stimulus. So again, how much Montana and Idaho are impacted, sort of that part of America versus Denver or versus Los Angeles or versus Austin, Texas might be a little bit different. It's a sense of monetary policy tools can't be directed to solve a specific problem or to boost a specific industry or region. Risks of hyperinflation. Interest rates are set too low. Overborrowing at artificially cheap rates can occur, and I think that's where I think we're in that now. And this can cause a speculative bubble. And we spoke about bubbles earlier in the semester, whereby the price increases too quickly to absurdly high levels, adding more money to the economy. It can also run the risk of causing out of control inflation due to the premise of supply and demand. If more money is available in circulation, the value of each unit of money will decrease given an unchanged level of demand, making things priced in that money nominally more expensive. Okay, so then we have some other stuff here. The definitions of fiscal, the specific definitions of monetary. Yeah, these could be other quick little, 20 or 30-minute lectures on this stuff. Now we'll look at the fiscal policy advantages and disadvantages. Again, this is the taxing and spending policies of the nation's government, is what this stuff is. A tighter restrictive fiscal policy includes raising taxes, cutting back on federal spending. A loose or expansionary fiscal policy is just the opposite, is used to encourage economic growth. And fiscal policy tools are based on Keynesian economics, again, which hopes to boost demand. Again, you're based on your income, your consumption based on your income, if it's government funded or not, or just you working. Okay. And then the positives of this, unlike monetary policy tools, which are general, the government can direct spending to the Queens Midtown Tunnel or some projects out in Washington State or something like that. Sectors or regions the same with the economy where it's perceived to be needed the most. Taxation is used to discourage negative externalities. So in other words, you'll tax like cigarettes were $1 or $2 a pack when I was, in college, 3 decades ago. Now they're far more. I think it's $7 a pack or something like that, right? What does a pack of cigarettes cost? It's obviously after it came out that cigarettes are harmful. Cost of pack. Here balancing everything, prices by state. Let's see, New York or New Jersey. Yes, yeah, about $8. I knew it was about $8. And let's see, where have the taxes hit this? Uh, excise tax is big. It's really the excise tax. That's sort of the penalties. Hawaii $3, Maine $2, Massachusetts $3.51, New York $4, New Jersey almost $3 in New Jersey. Pennsylvania on its way to $3. And then Virginia very low. So again, Virginia's low across the board. But yeah, I can see, so it's, again, that's sort of a penalty tax to discourage you getting sick, right? And then there's a cost to especially if you don't have health insurance, there's a cost to the population for doing that. The effective fiscal policy tools can be seen much quicker than the effects on monetary policy tools. And the negatives may be politically motivated. Raising taxes can be unpopular and politically dangerous to implement. May be spent on imports. The effective fiscal stimulus is muted when the money put into the economy through tax savings or government spending is spent on imports. Sending the money abroad instead of keeping the local economy. So, yeah, you got to be careful because the spending, at least up to now, the government, there's not controls on what people like direct controls on spending. But with the way the country's and America's going, who knows if that might change one day? It could. But yeah, you want to be careful that you're not creating incentives and then you're losing the capital is sort of wandering away from the country instead of spending it locally. And also, let's see, amount of capital offshored out of America, out of USA. That's a big number. Yeah. So it's a fortune. I said 2.6 trillion. Wow. Okay, that's one hell of a number. That's one hell of a number. Is offshored. I don't know what ITEP is. A taxation economic policy. Yeah, that's big numbers. That's big number. Yeah, that's about a third, right? That's that 33% federal tax, right? Is what that is. 8 over 24. It's 8 over 2.4 or 0.8 over 2.4, right? So that's a good number. That's a good number. And again, these goes back a couple years, but so I guess unrepatriated income. Apple has the biggest amount of it. What's considered these very right progressive companies, right? Microsoft, Intel, big numbers, right? Those are big numbers from those guys. So Pfizer, all heavily, so these 33, it's about a trillion, right? Because if this is millions, it's another 6 zeros, right? But this is good. Yeah. So this is the Institute for Tax. What is it? Taxation Economic Policy. But there you go. Okay. So that's big stuff that's overseas. Again, you can start creating budget deficits. Right. If spending is high and taxes are low for too long, such a deficit can continue to widen to dangerous levels. And just sort of finishing off what we're talking about here. These are tools used in concert to help keep economic growth stable with low inflation and low unemployment and stable prices. There's no silver bullet or generic strategy can be implemented as both sets of policy tools can carry with them their own pros and cons. Used effectively, however, the net benefit is positive to society, especially in stimulating demand for following a crisis. Okay. All right. Like I said, we'll go into fiscal policy a little more specific. We'll go into, again, fiscal policy, monetary policy a little more specific. We'll cut some other videos, might be a little bit longer with that, and we'll talk about federal funds rate again. And there's always more stuff you can talk about with all of this, right? We can always talk about more. Here's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So we have whatever it's nine more live days across a lot of these sections. All right. All right, folks. So today was a little bit of a short one today. I hope you learned some stuff and check out this website with what we're offshoring. Okay. And that'll be that. All right, folks. Thank you.